All right, and I think we're live. And hey, today we have an Axie Chat Extra. It's going to be a good time. We've got Enjoy, and we've also got Indes, and he's coming to us from across the pond. Welcome, Indes.
Um, Thanks for having me. How are you, Barano?
I'm doing good, man. I'm having a good day. We're looking forward to it. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna go through Axie battles and talk about that type of stuff. And Enjoy, do you have any questions for Endus as we just kind of get started?
No, I mean, I think most people from Discord, who have been active in the community even a week or so, know who Indus is. He tends to be the guy who jumps in and helps out and, helps the new guys pick out their teams and just all around helpful in the arena space. So, this has been something that we've been talking about for a while. We wanted to get him on here and just kind of talk about what his methodology is behind, how he helps people out. And even bigger news recently is, he just had a big tournament win under his belt last weekend. So, wanted to congratulate him on that. Indus, I guess, we've kind of known each other via text, anyways, for a long time. What's your background? Have you played competitive games in the past? Is Axie kind of your first go at this sort of stuff? What brought you to us, and what's your background look like?
Funnily enough, I before this I played Clash Royale competitively, and that
Ah,
was actually where I originally met Chief.
Oh,
So
wow.
about 4 years ago, I think now, I played kind of under the team that Chief managed, and yeah, so since that was kind of very semi-professional, and then after kind of the team disbanded, I moved on to coaching, and so I coached up to what I'd probably call kind of like the almost like the bit just before you get to professional. So it was in a league where people were the kind of the salaries were enough to live on for certain people. So it was to like a good high level.
Oh,
And then
wow.
after that, so yeah, that was up until about March this year. And Chief had always told me about this game, probably since probably last year, I'd say now, like a good year ago. Chief had mentioned this to me, and I was always like, "Oh, I've got school, I've got Clash Royale, I don't really have anything else. Like, I don't have much time left over." And so when the pandemic, of course, hit, my exams that were supposed to be this year were cancelled, so I no longer had anything to work towards. And I'd really kind of fallen out of love with Clash Royale as well. So it kind of came at the perfect time. Chief got me involved. I started playing up on one of his accounts. So really, since the start, I had kind of had access to the top kind of level of teams and the top level of arena. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think in the first season that I played, I managed to finish top 20, like with 3 or 4 days just left of the season. And then ever since
Wow.
then, it's been arena and tournaments for me.
well, that's awesome. I mean, with a coaching background like that, I mean, I guess it's no surprise that you have a lot of skills that let you kind of analyze the interactions and how that's going to turn out. I played Clash Royale quite a bit. Definitely nothing competitively. I can't even remember the trophy level I got to, but I mean, I got kind of high. It's a fun game. I really enjoy it. But I can see it's probably pretty difficult, right? With Clash Royale, sometimes there's nerfs and buffs and things switching around and new cards, and I mean, I guess we have some of that too with Axie Infinity, right?
Yeah, so the way that I kind of put Axie against Clash Royale is that Clash Royale has a lot of micro mechanical skill alongside, the macro mechanics, the decision making, and a lot of what Clash Royale was the familiarity with the cards, and a lot of it was the placements, and you had to count card cycle, manage elixir in that game. Sorry, I nearly said energy.
Yeah,
So there are some similarities in that. So kind of the carryover into this game was really what I liked focusing on more, which was the macro aspect, the decision making, what goes into that. So I think it was really kind of the perfect fit for me.
that's awesome. No, that's really really cool. Yeah, so I definitely want to get into specifics and so forth, and it's really good to have that background from you, Indus, to kind of see where you're coming from and get a sense of that. So I guess that kind of naturally allows you to kind of help people out and give them some coaching tips and advice. One of the things that I think about when I think about Axie battles is, I have somewhat of a pool. I don't have a chief pool or, Ben or any of those guys, the Axie GG OG guys. But I have somewhat of a pool. What do you think about people who are just kind of starting out and they're trying to get in affordably and kind of have a limited number of Axies available to them, price wise too? I mean, is that a challenge, do you think?
I think for a brand new player, it definitely is. Like I'd say that's the most difficult part of getting into the game. It's getting your first set of axes, and there's really lots of things to it. Because even if you come in, I know like 2 ETH with the 2 ETH budget, you're still not guaranteed to get the best team because it really is up to the team balance and how it fits into the meta. And so with players coming into the game, I'll normally kind of point them towards the usual like articles, videos. Like Chief's got a good couple of videos on
Yeah.
there. But yeah, it's about kind of looking and analyzing the meta. But one difficulty and one trap that I'd say people fall into is using Axie Zone and looking at the top 100. The meta there is really very different from the lower ranks. And I had some experience of this season where I had originally planned on doing, like a challenge where I was going to use the point 2 ETH team and push up to the top 50. But of course, with the recent really cracking down on the one person per account, I had to
Right.
stop doing that. But what I did notice before then was that I'd get strings of 8, 10, 12 games where I just faced Bird Beast, and that really seems to be the thing, is that you either play Bird Beast or you play a team that does well against Bird Beast in the lower ranks. And for a new player starting out, I'd really try and consider how is your team going to match up against Bird Beast, and are you going to be able to get through that initial kind of wall of players, and then you can start playing against the players that are more kind of experienced or just better overall players, and then you can really put your team to a test and start expanding your Axie pool.
That's interesting because that's kind of my main point. I haven't been trying hard to get into the leaderboard where I'm facing those top 500, top 100 types of teams. Instead, I'm still kind of wanting to make sure that I'm maximizing my effort on a daily basis. So my team is almost entirely built to, if I see that standard Rimp Bird kind of combo team, like I don't really have any fear. Every now and then they outpower me, but most of the time I think my win rate's still, in the 60, 70% range because I specifically have designed it to be kind of a meta killer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely the best strategy, I think, for somebody either that isn't kind of trying to play competitively and pushing up. That's really just focusing on getting your dailies in. It's going to be a lot a lot less stressful if you do have a team that can work well against the Bird Beast.
Awesome. And hey, everybody who's tuned in right now, please be sure to put questions in the chat for Indes. We are going to go through some very specific comps. We're going to talk about things really specifically, and we're hoping to actually do some gameplay as well. We know we're kind of keeping him up a little bit late, so we'll try to be mindful of that. But, if you have questions or if you just want to give Indes a hard time, please do so. We look forward to it. We're going to have a great time for sure. So moving on, I want to talk about version 2 at some point. We don't have to talk about it a lot, but maybe give us an overview just kind of I've got a slide up now that just kind of gives us the general sort of rock, paper, scissors, as most of us refer to it, of Axie Infinity battling. And that's got to be
Hey,
a
that
pretty...
looks familiar.
Well, this is a new one, actually, that I think Axie Edge and Joy may have put this one together.
I made this because I was so sick of writing rock paper scissors in chat and having somebody drop the old one. I needed the exact percentages and figure. I don't know. I was just so lost. But anyways, go on. I'm sorry.
No, you're perfect. So the idea here, I just wanted to kind of probe with you, Indes, how you see this. Is this a big, huge part of how you look at putting a team together? Is it kind of a side issue, or what do you think? Because sometimes I see teams and I'm just like, wow, they don't even care about some of that RPS interaction,
I think it's massive. It's the main thing that I think about every single time when I put together a team. And the one thing that I would say is that I always try and encourage players to have a kind of like a roundedness to the damage of their team. And really aiming for at least 2 of the 3 of the rock paper scissors, and the main one being beast bug, because a lot of the downfall, I think, even of the team of yours that you play that I looked at yesterday, is that you don't have enough damage to take out the tank. And every single team, or I say every single, the vast majority of teams are going to have a plant or a dusk tank that you really want to be getting out the way before you can work on the back two axes. So as long as you have, I'd say beast and bug damage, and then either some good plant and reptile or bird and aqua damage, then you should be set to play against the vast majority of teams. And another thing to note is that you don't want to be too heavy on just like one class. Like triple plant, something like that is just not really all too viable. At most, you want to have like a plant tank and then a reptile or plant backliner, with a beast in the middle or a bug in the middle, something like that. But you never really want to have three of any of the rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, I mean, I have faced a few triple plant that kind of shocked me, but like you're saying, if I was a little bit more balanced, and I took your criticism to heart right away, and threw a beast in there into the mix just to see how that went, and I was relatively successful. I mean, I wasn't playing a whole bunch, but yeah, I mean, right, triple plant. If you've got beast, you're probably gonna destroy them, right?
Yeah, so just as a kind of, I'm sure some like really high level players can make it work, but that's really one of those things that unless you have a very kind of large Axie pool and very specific Axies that you put in there, then it's not really going to be, your new players thing that they're going to be able to pick up and be able to work with.
Right, makes sense.
And I'm taking a lot of this to heart because I've never been a huge fan of the whole RIMP thing. I think I came in and really started playing after that was nerfed. So just, it never really worked with my team comp. And, we all know what Indes thinks about my team comps. But that's something that I do come up against because my team relies pretty heavily on backdooring, the typical 350 HP beast and the 330 HP bird in the backline. And then I'm stuck with this plant that, with maybe one or two weak Axies left, and they can kind of just pick me away while healing up or shielding up at the same time. So that's definitely something that I'm going to change.
Right. Okay, so the next one I wanted to put up, when we go away from rock, paper, scissors, we go to what I've always kind of called the purity bonus, the same part class bonus. And I pulled this off of BA's website, Binary Assets, because it seemed to be the most specific examples I could find out there where he talks specifically about the bonus. And so if you are talking about rock, paper, scissors, and then you're adding the purity bonus, you're talking about a total of 30% bonus right there, right, Indes?
Yep, exactly. And I have this like Google Doc, which I originally made when I was coming into the game just to help me get to grips with things. And that's always like front and center on there. The purity bonus is something that I think a lot of people overlook, whether that be just because they don't know it exists, or whether they just don't care about it as much. Because partly, pures are always going to be a bit more expensive, so it can be tricky for a new player to fork out the extra to get a pure Axie. But yeah, generally, it's a good kind of like having a pure Axie. Generally, it's going to be better than an impure one. Like if you're just looking at it from like a really simple down view. But yeah, I definitely say that one or two parts that aren't of the same class can generally carry an Axie through. But I mean, if you look at the top 100, a lot of Axies are pure, just because, of course, those type of moves are supposed to fit that archetype of the Axie.
So when you think about that, how I guess so that multiplies, right? I guess that's my question. So if you have the rock, paper, scissors and you have those bonuses, like all of that actually has kind of a synergistic effect, meaning like if you crit in that situation, those are going to carry through. Is that right?
Yeah, so when you crit, it does double the damage of so of course the base damage, and then any sort of class bonuses or class matchup advantage. But the only thing that isn't added is skill. And so skill being combo bonus isn't really too impactful right now. It's kind of like the one base stat that's really overlooked, but it is still noticeable. Like, your extra, I don't know the specific figures, but it seems like 5 or 15 damage, depending on how high the skill of an Axie is. So
okay.
That isn't added to crits, but it's always something to keep in mind that let's say I have the opportunity to attack with 2 Axies or the 1, I'm always going to go with the 1, just because of that. It gets that extra little bit of damage.
Right. Makes sense. All right, so this next slide is just that spreadsheet that talks about how kind of parts are calculated for bonuses. And up in that legend, it actually talks about, what you just said, skill increases damage on combos. And then, speed and morale. I mean, HP is kind of obvious. Is there anything about this chart that maybe people miss or that ought to be pointed out specifically? Or just that they need to pay attention to it?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I guess maybe just for an extra bit of understanding to know what each individual part gives to an Axie, because I think that's often something that new players just have no understanding of whatsoever. Like you look at an Axie and you're like, okay, why does it have that much speed? Why does it have that much HP and whatnot? But if you do know that the base stats of each part gives, for the Aqua 3 speed and an HP, Beast 3 morale and a speed, that sort of thing, it will really help you, especially when you're trying to breed a combo, or just looking at one when you're trying to a lot of the time it's aligning your speeds correctly in a build. So knowing what you are able to add onto a build will definitely help you out there.
Yeah, no, I have a reptile backliner that I really like, and I sure wish it was 40 speed instead of 41, because it seems like every beast in the world basically is 41 speed.
Yeah, so that's the pure of a reptile and beast is both 41 speed. But I guess the trade-off for you is then generally reptiles will pair the best with beasts just because they offer that tank ability to kill a tank. It also has the energy manipulation, and it offsets the reptile damage. Within the rock paper scissors, and the reptile generally the backliner, so it won't have as much damage for the early game. So generally, there you want to have a reptile that's faster than your beast to cover backdoor from, as we've been speaking about a lot, those little owl birds. So it could actually be a blessing in disguise for you,
right?
If you were to bring up that team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it ends up being a situation where it's almost like it comes down to that speed, that final speed computation, as to who's going to go first and who's going to go second with the same speed.
Are there? Oh man, I can't talk. Are there any of those stats that you would consider overrated or underrated when people are looking at Axies?
Speed's definitely one that a new player looks to, and they just see it as the kind of like incredibly powerful thing. And I guess that's just drilled into you because your new players always suggested, buy a beast and bird. So they probably see their bird as that really strong kind of Axie just because it always does act first. And the same kind of with the next wave of Aquas. I think speed's definitely something that people kind of push too highly. But I guess you'll never know until you test, and you play a wide variety of Axies that do have lower speeds and see that there are perks to that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I very first got involved and I saw Aqua at 3 speed and then plus the hit points, and I'm thinking fast and lots of hit points, like how's that possibly going to be beat? So I from the very start, I just kind of saw Aquas as like, man, that just seems like the right combination. And here I am. I don't even know if I'm running an Aqua right now.
Yeah, I think the risky fish nerf, which was one that I actually suggested that was against most people were saying that it was a stupid nerf, but I think it was really needed because I don't know if you guys keep up too much with the top of the arena, but I and a couple of others were able to run double aqua teams with a lot of success. And when I say double aqua, I just mean 257 speed aquas, back one with Koi or Koinobori.
Oh yeah.
To have the speed bonus to go ahead of birds whenever you choose to, and then a midline with Nemo for that extra energy gain. And then most of the builds just had 3 damage parts on both of those Axies, and then your standard tank up top. And the reason why that was able to work was because with the risky fish bonus, Aquas were able to chop down tanks. And if you chuck an extra kind of beast part in there as well, I definitely remember originally I would run one with a dual blade. I think I had a risky fish dual blade combo on my back Axie, and double aqua was able to reliably beat like triple plant teams if you just played it correctly. And
right.
That's something that I think shouldn't really be able to happen. And that was all because of the base stats of aquas, because you had the speed and then also the HP makes them very good bruisers.
Right. Okay, well let's move forward into buffs and debuffs. These things are hugely important too. And, we're talking about all these things. They all kind of are components of how battling moves forward and how how we kind of set up a team, or how battle resolution takes place. Obviously, these are pretty important too. I mean, when you look at it, Indus, are you looking very specifically at buffs, debuffs, in addition to everything else? I mean, it's quite a formula. It's quite complicated, even though initially it seems relatively straightforward.
Yeah, so generally, I think it's kind of the secondary thinking. Unless you're building a team around, let's say, one thing that I've built recently is a cute bunny team. So that's with the fear debuff, and that's very strong if you can get the speed pinches correctly. So as long as you've got the Axies that are fast enough or have the capability to be fast enough with speed manipulators like speed, I don't know if it's on the, speed down or speed up, then you're able to basically just pinch off entire Axies. So let's say you have like an Aqua that's quicker than a beast, and then you have a slower beast or bug, then you can pinch it with a faster cute bunny, and then the slower Axie doesn't mess up with the fear, so you still get the fear chain, and then you can fear it again when you're slower, or finish it off with the slower Axie. So that's something that's very strong, I think, with the fear, and that's something that I definitely keep in mind when building a team around that. But aside from that, I generally kind of just opt for Axies that have the capability to, like moves that have the capability to apply a debuff. Like Chill, I think, is one that's definitely very underrated. I use Grandma's Fan on my birds and Ranchu on a midline Winghorn Aqua that I have. So preventing last stands is just something that, especially in the current meta where we see a lot of beasts, and especially these Axie Kiss beasts, you really want to ensure that you kill them before they're able to get their attacks off. And with Chill, you just ensure that you don't have to worry about finishing them off with a lot of extra damage.
Right, and I don't want to go into these too specifically, but in addition to these buffs and debuffs, there are also like on hit modifiers too that come into play too, which aren't here. I mean, one of them I really like to run is Hermit, because I just can't stand that Rimp meta that's out there right now. So I like that critical block, but again, that's not listed here. There's also what's the bite that takes away last stand? If they hit it, they just die. They can't go into last stand. So there.
Shoal Star prevents
Shoal
stands,
Star.
and Aranda gets rid of them all in one hit. So let's say you're going against a beast, normally it takes away one last stand bar per turn, and then an extra for being attacked. The Aranda would get rid of all three.
Right. Yeah, and so again, even beyond these specific buffs and debuffs, there's also on-hit effects that affect the game as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how much does utility actually play into it? Like, I know that was kind of the question earlier, but like when you're looking at damage versus utility, is there one that's more preferred, or does it just kind of revolve around what your overall team comp is and what's needed, what's left over in that team comp that you don't have currently?
I think kind of initially it's always about the team balance, but then as I look to optimize teams, you can definitely try and involve more of the debuffs, or just kind of moves that have what I'd kind of coin it outplay potential. So like your attack down moves, and one that I've used for a while, and one that I actually won my last season with was Gila, which is a reptile tail, which is quite a rare part. So it's not really seen that often. And Gila, when the opponent's poisoned, it applies an attack down. So I used that on a reptile that had Chomp as well. So they'd miss their initial hit, and then their second one would be lessened by a lot because of the attack down. And that was with running a plant tank that had Yam on it. So I think it's definitely one of those things that's kind of like a secondary or like a later optimization stage that you're considering. Can I add this on here, which will give me an extra little advantage? But it's never kind of like the main thing that I'm thinking about, unless it's like a Yam
Poison team,
something like that that's built around the debuff.
Right. I mean, I really like that stun card, and maybe I even focus too much on it. This is a good conversation for me too. I mean, I tend to look at these buffs and debuffs, and I'm from MMORPGs, and I really like spells, and so there's a different game I play called Dominion. It's a deck building card drawing game, and in that they talk about the silver test, which is just the basic purchase power. And so sometimes what I'm hearing is basic basic damage avoidance. Looking at the way that those bonus up together, that might actually be a higher priority than necessarily these buffs, debuffs. These are maybe more of something to add on, if you can, in the whole scheme of your team build.
Yeah, exactly.
That
And
makes
not
sense.
to get off topic, but I was just reading through the chat, and somebody's brought up. I think the question was: is this game about good decision making in the actual game, or is it about putting together the balanced team? And so, what I'd say to that is that this kind of initial discussion, it was mainly based around how you can put yourself in the best possible standing to be able to win a game. And so, I think the emphasis really should be on kind of a balanced team to give yourself that initial kind of as much of an advantage as you can get. And really, like all, if you look at any of my teams that I use for Arena, they're all, the emphasis is always on balance and giving me the best possible chance to outplay the opponent during the match. And so I wouldn't take anything that I say to be like, okay, if your team isn't balanced, you can't win. But it's kind of giving you the best possible chance for Arena. And as you kind of, I don't know how much we're talking about tournament play, balance isn't as important if you know your opponent's team pool, and then of course you can cater to it specifically. But for Arena, you're trying to, it really is just preparing yourself for as many possible teams and giving yourself that enough of a chance to then be able to use your better decision making in the game to outplay the opponent. But if you have a team that just has absolutely no chance whatsoever against an opponent's team, even if you play much better than them, then you're really just shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
Right. And I think a lot of new players that, that's one of the first questions that come up, right? Because they're kind of fed that rock, paper, scissors chart and they see, how things go or how, how that damage multiplier works. And then they get in the game and you can't really do anything once you're in the game. You can't change your team comp. So the question is, well, if the other team beats me, has an advantage over me in this rock, paper, scissors, what can I do? But the point is like ideally you want to build your team to be able to have an advantage no matter what the rock, paper, scissors is, but give you enough options to kind of outplay them. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and that's where outplay potential. That's what my emphasis would be on having.
Sure.
What I'd kind of like the general things that I put there is backdoors, energy manipulation, or specifically energy steal is a good one. So like have energy control so that you like you can use your kind of the information that you're given in a game to know, okay, there's a certain points where the opponent needs to have energy or he needs to build up, they need to build up energy to do something, like let's say they need to save up for a backdoor into one of your axes, and then
Right.
knowing that you can use the energy steal cards to force them into, like basically just manipulating them into the best possible situation for you. Because that's the thing, in some bad matchups there's kind of like one or two ways, it's the only way you're going to win, and it's just bringing something like a backdoor or energy steal really helps you in that situation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we
And
haven't even talked a ton about energy manipulation either. Yeah.
right. And I just want to bring up too, while we're kind of on that topic, again, the same point that a lot of new people come in, they build a team and they get stomped by a variety of other teams. You know, Ideally you're always going to lose a few matches here and there. Even Indus loses a few matches and he's top of the leaderboard and winning these tournaments. But over the goal is to win the majority of your matches over a longer period. So if you play 100 games, you want to be above that 50% range to be improving in rank. That's the real goal. You're never going to win 100% of matches.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so two things from the chat I want to point out before we move on too much. One just popped up about random crits. How do you feel about crits? And are they balanced? Does it make sense? Are they in better shape now, or do you think that crits create too much just randomness and luck in the game?
I think that's the one gripe, like main gripe I'd have with the Axie team focusing on this on V2. I think they're really missing an opportunity to almost kind of try and perfect the current system they have. Because I think the main thing with the current system that lets it down is the crits. And the issue with it is, right, I think it's more apparent in tournament games that you can see there are just times where crits completely change the scope of the game. But another part of it, I think Baron and I might have actually had this conversation with you, is that every single Axie has the potential to do double the amount of damage. And I think morale is something that could definitely be taken and either it be applied. So let's say the higher the morale of an Axie, the higher the amount of added damage they get for a crit, or really just keep the current kind of way it is, but like half the amount of crits or something like that. I wouldn't be opposed to a complete just cutting it in half, because right now it's like a 10% of a chance of a beast critting a plant. But if that was 5%, I'd much prefer it. And another thing is that speed's currently added into the
Crit.
what do you call it, formula.
Yep.
And I think that's just something that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to me. Like, I don't understand why. So take the fastest Axies, Aquas and Birds. Birds already have the fastest speed. Aquas already have high HP and the speed.
Yep.
Why should they not be crit as often, or why should they be offered kind of the chance to crit more often just because of their speed? I think that's
100%.
kind of undermining the game as it is, and it doesn't happen too often. So don't take this as I completely hate crits. The game's completely broken. It's just that'd be my one thing with it. That speed definitely doesn't need to be in there.
So something's changed, because I feel like I'm not getting bird crit as much as it was, but I don't know how that's happened, or if it's just me taking a more taking more moderation in the game, in my game playing. I'm not sure, but
I'll be honest. Yesterday I was pretty far behind, and I think I only had a bird left, and there was two other Axies on the other team, and I crit like 3 times in a row and took it.
Okay, never mind.
I'll be honest. I was jumping up and down, and I'm sure the other guy was throwing his phone across the room. But I think there is a point though that a little bit of random chance is fun. It makes things fun for the person who's winning. And everybody gets them occasionally. I am the problem, AK. I'm sorry. But you're right. I think there still needs to be a little bit of balancing to be done. 3 times in a row should not happen ever, I don't think. I don't know. And we'll see what happens in V2.
Yeah, Indes and I have talked about this. I prefer strategy games with a component of luck rather than luck games that you try to influence by strategy. And so that's just my own personal take on that. But so secret classes, what do you think about those? I mean, we don't have parts for the secret classes. They did add a little bit of rock, paper, scissors for the secret classes, so they're not just completely hosed as far as purity. I said rock, paper, scissors, but I meant purity. The rock, paper, scissors is already there. But they did add a little bit of purity component to those. Is it enough? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like and I don't even know how you do it. Like if you add secret class parts, does every Dusk mech and Dawn need to be re-rolled for their parts, or what is that? I don't know. What do you think about the secret classes and where they're at right now, Indes?
So I think what the two other ones, Mech and Dawn, I don't think they have any viability whatsoever, because I just don't see, like, specifically in their base stats, I don't see any reason why you'd want one of them over your beast. Let's say take Mech, for example. Mech's too fast for the sort of role that it plays. Like, you can't play it in let's say a beast reptile team where the beast's always going to be backdoor covered. It's the same as you can't play it in what I'd call a bug plant team, where the bug's going to be backdoor covered in some way. The mech's just too fast to be able to cover against your little owl and your watermelon backdoors. And then also just kind of having the 7.5%, I don't think it's actually fixed yet, but it doesn't add on for shield either. So that's something that disadvantages Dusks. But Dusks are the only real one that I think have a use case. And I think we'll see that more so if/when Sirius is nerfed, because I think Sirius is just far too strong right now. And of course, Energy Steel is always going to be strong, but I think the base stats that it offers are just much greater than kind of any sort of comparable mouth. Like, you take Sirius, which has 50 shield and 30 damage, and then the next kind of best mouth is going to be your Herbivore or Zigzag. Right. Herbivore does 60-60 and it heals itself. Zigzag does 50-50 and it heals itself.
But only plants, and that's one of the advantages of Dusk, right? Is then Herbivore doesn't actually get the energy or the life steal.
Yeah, so it doesn't get that extra 15%. But to me, I think Dusk's, the role that they should play is a more kind of brick wall tank, and one that's more difficult to kill. And they can also offer that backdoor cover against beasts. But the problem is right now, they're either not bred for. So like the example build of what I'd use on a Dusk is a strong back, like your Red Ears, your Hermits, then a Wall Gecko or a Snakejar tail with a heel on the horn, and then the mouth right now it's a bit up in air because of course Sirius is so strong.
Yeah.
But probably something like Razorbyte, anything like that, and just its role is to, again, just kind of like the stereotypical role of a tank. It's supposed to take damage, but also be annoying and stay alive because it's got the Rosebud, but it's faster. So potentially even faster than the opponent's beast, and you can heal up before they're able to kill you.
Right. Yep. No, that
But
makes sense.
but the issue right now is that Sirius, of course, you want to be able to steal last because then, like, let's say somebody steals from you with Rice, you can steal back with your Sirius. So really, the importance is on having the 31, 32 speed plant. That's why it's not really too viable on a Dusk. And then because Sirius is just so strong, there's not really that many reasons why you'd want to play that Dusk tank.
All right, we're moving on. We're talking about composition of teams a little bit more specifically. So we're going to move into what I like to call Indes intro to PvP builds for fun and profit and for ultimate smackdown and humiliation that will last throughout the centuries on the chain for all time. Yeah, you're welcome for that, Indes.
Before or maybe leading into this, actually, it's a good cover of what we just covered, and I think it leads into this nicely. Indes, if we were to give you a few different categories, so a team that's meta or team balanced, stats like damage or damage reduction, energy, utility, how would you rank those in terms of like which one comes first, and how would you work your way through to the end? I'll throw them in chat real quick, just if you could. Again, if somebody's looking for how to build a team, in what order would you put these?
So is this like, what sort of situation am I in? Am I a new player?
If you're a new player, you haven't bought in anything yet, you're just kind of going through the research, which way would you what would you lean towards first, and how would you work your way through these two couple items here?
I'd go team balance, energy, meta, utility, and then damage reduction. So
Okay.
Team balance kind of falls under energy in a sense. Like a balanced team is always going to have enough energy, kind of either be it gain or steal. Not necessarily steal, but at least some sort of direct energy gain card that will allow you to keep in the game and not be like too heavy on just either all one costing energy moves and not having a zero cost, or just not being balanced off by a Nemo or a Cottontail or a Leafbug. And then so team balance, I just spoke about that one, sorry. And then what was the next one? So energy and team balance kind of fall into the same. And then meta, as a new player, as we've spoken about, just being capable of taking down that third beast matchup, which is really just going to be what you're facing the most. And then utility, I'd kind of fall that under outplay potential. So have you got that backdoor? Have you got kind of the energy steal, something like that? Have you got fear? Anything like that that sort of will allow you to put your opponent in a situation where they've really got to decide, and it kind of puts it into your hands. And then last being damage or damage reduction. Damage, again, sort of, I'd say balance of damage falls under team balance. So, have covering two of the three of the rock, paper, scissors, but then just straight damage itself. It really is dependent on the team composition, but generally for a new player, you want to have a decent bit of damage, because you're really going to be lacking in kind of the game awareness of when to attack and when not to. But if you have extra damage, is better than less damage, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I think that's awesome because, again, a lot of people come in and they buy and they're just looking at those stats. So they're either looking at the HP maybe, but it's usually the damage and what they're seeing is popular right now. So you kind of just upended the whole thinking pattern of new people coming in.
Awesome. All right, we good? Okay.
I think we're good. Sorry.
Okay. Move
on to your slides.
But before we get that, we had a question in chat about he's saying, could you speak to the mid and late game situational awareness? 3v2, your tank dies. 2v2, steal versus destroy value. 1v1, the importance of zero costs on a backliner. So can you give us information, or is this more of like you just need to be in those situations and practice and see what happens and really just kind of develop the best strategies with experience?
So part of being prepared for the mid to late game, of course, is going to fall into the team that you have. And I'm not sure if it comes up on the slides, but of the teams that I sent you, a lot of them had some sort of way of tackling either a 1v1 or getting rid of an unfavorable 1v1. So one thing that you did mention there was a zero cost on a backliner. And so right now I'd say kind of that your meta build is going to be a zero cost plus chomp reptile, but also just any sort of zero cost on a backliner is so helpful to avoid those stuns, whether it be from a snail shell or directly from a chomp, because that's kind of it's a pretty common strategy nowadays to have that chomp because of course you're knocking out one of your opponent's moves in a 1v1, and that either, let's say on a plant, allows you to survive through to the next round against beasts if you were running like a slow snail shell backliner, or if with a reptile, the same again, you've managed to knock out at least one of the beast attacks, so you have a chance to survive. And then just it really does capitalize on people that are running just 4 straight damage moves, or that they don't have any sort of defensive moves. If you can catch one of them off with a with a sorry, what's you call with a with a stun. So yeah, I think having zero cost, like being prepared for the late game, is really either having a 1v1 Axie that can generate energy through stuns. So let's say using 2 zero cost moves and a chomp, and then knowing that you're able to survive because you cancel out one of your opponent's moves. Something like that would be one way. Either having like a midline Axie that prepares you with energy. So kind of your standard would be a Rimp with, you know, your Cottontail Goda. If you're able to get your backliner enough energy by the time you get to the 1v1, then it isn't as important to have that zero cost because you're always going to have energy to be able to cycle through. Or something like a beast, I guess, on like a beast aqua team, as long as that 1v1 beast has a zero cost to be able to outplay through. Again, really, it's about stuns, direct stuns, or outplaying snail shell. It's very important.
All right, so we've got your first one here, Beast Reptile, up, and maybe just kind of give us an idea of what your goal here is and what we can learn from this type of team composition.
Okay, so Beast Reptile has really been like I'd say like a staple of the latter half of live battles. So really the first time I was exposed to this team composition was against Z. So Z and I actually matched in a finals. I can't remember how long ago now, probably about 3 months ago. That was the first time I got into a finals in an Axie tournament, and Z beat me 3-2. And the main thing was he had this beast and reptile team, and I had no idea how to approach it. It had like double energy steal, I think, on his beast. And I was always a passive player up to that point, and it was just punishing me every single game. I didn't know how to play against it. And so the reason why this team is so strong is because you've got this 1v1 end boss, and this is actually a very unique reptile that AK and I bred. I think I can't even. The story is basically that an Axie went up and it had Kestrel in on its main move, and then Chomp in a recessive. And I had an Axie that would have paired really well with it, but I couldn't actually afford to buy it at that point. So I messaged AK, he bought it, and we bred it, and we hit this. And the reason why this Axie is so strong is because it doesn't show on there, but it's 45 speed. And so, you know, you've spoken to it today. Your standard beasts are normally going to be 41 speed, but a lot of them now, people have started adjusting and adding a bird or an aqua part to their beasts, so they're 43 speed. So this is then an even further counter to that, having 45 speed. So I'm pretty much almost always going to be quicker than the beast or the opposing reptile. And then the Kestrel on this build gets rid of a lot of popular zero costs right now, like lagging, Kaku, or against plants, their main damage deal is going to be the horn in a beech or a cactus. So that's really its role there, not only to give speed to be quicker, but also to allow for me to use a faster beast, because I think I spoke to this briefly earlier, where you always want your beast to be backdoor covered. So the beast in this situation is 43 speed, so often I'll actually be faster than opposing beasts with my not only my backliner, but also my beast as well. And so the real focus of this build is that having the zero cost on the backliner, and then having just a rounded tank with a carrot as well for energy gain, allows me to use this straight damage beast. And so this was really tying into the energy having enough energy throughout your team is that this reptile backliner with the disable, with the zero cost chomp, it doesn't need energy to set itself up for the 1v1. It can create energy through just narrowing off the opponent's options. So that's why it's just straight damage beast, the beast roll, kill the tank, set up the best possible 1v1 for the back Axie. And another added part of that is with the double energy manipulation, which is something that I spoke a bit about, is that just allows me to have that control and really using those energy steals when I know the opponent needs energy. And this is why this is like my go-to arena team. I haven't used it that often this season because it's just so strong that I've been testing other teams. But when I do push up, this will probably be my go-to just because of this control.
Yeah, Rice is one of them I see on here. And again, you were talking about Sirius being a little bit overpowered. What do you think about Rice?
That's another one that I think it needs a nerf. I wouldn't say it's as strong as Sirius. Not like comparing the two, but comparing it to other tails that you could use on a beast build.
Right.
Like Hair and Nutcracker are both kind of viable tails, I would say. But the reason why Rice is so strong right now is because with kind of the way the crits are as well, there's not too much for like let's say, I'm not going to say lower level player, but kind of a less experienced player. Like there's no reason for him not to just play their Rice's first round and just go full attack with their beast, because at worst like in the worst possible scenario, the opponent defends. Oh, they might still get an energy steal off, or they could just crit you and get you out of the way and kill your tank and then steal both of your energy, and then they've got the game in their hands for the rest of the game. And that's really where Rice is at. It's a punish card, but because its damage is still at 90, there aren't too many kind of downsides to it, or using it in a very aggressive manner and not thinking too much past that with it.
I got to say a couple things, because one, this highlights for me how important these conversations are, because again, you can look at some of the top ranked teams or the top of the leaderboard teams in Axie Zone, and just see what other people are playing with, and you're never going to get this kind of insight. This is amazing. So thanks again, Indes. The other thing is I just keep getting blown away by the intricacies of this game. Like when you were talking about the reptile and adding the bird part to make it a little bit faster than other reptiles, again, a lot of people get stuck with that purity aspect or like the combination of moves, but they're not really looking at the entire picture. And that's something I would never ever think about is, man, if I could just add one bird part to increase that speed, and now I'm faster than the other team's beasts. Like, just I don't know, it just blew my mind. So
in chat there's some conversation going on, and it's great conversation, and the thing is like I just finished watching a show called Queen's Gambit. I don't know if you guys are into Netflix or not, but it's all about chess and stuff, and it's an amazing show. Like, to me, I feel like talking with Indes, like he can say a lot of the things that he's saying, but regardless of how much I listen to what he's saying, I'm not so sure I can even replicate it regardless. Because Indes, you're talking about, and I hope people understand, like, the thing about the way Indes approaches it from at least from my perspective is he's thinking so many levels deeper than what most people are capable of thinking. So Indes, I'm just real grateful again that you're here talking to us, giving us some tips and advice, and we'll try our best to implement things you're talking about. But like, for example, you're talking about a team that you might face that might be there, that you're trying to think of all the different possibilities that you might have to encounter. And here I'm just trying to think, okay, what's the best I can do, and how can I get things together? So I'll pull up the next slide. But I mean, again, I hope everybody realizes how valuable it is today to have Indes on here talking about these things. And the great thing about it is that I believe it can bring things to a new level. The downside is, we're going to be going with version 2, and so I think a lot of this stuff is going to still translate over. Obviously, Indes is going to be able to figure it out, but it will change a little bit. So listen, see how you can improve, and we'll see what happens in the next seasons. So the next one you have is this bug plant, and kind of give us your concept here. Why this is a build you think is important.
So this is just kind of showing an example of what you can do with a bug or a plant backliner, because right now people seem to be quite wrapped up in the beast reptile and how strong that is, but this is kind of a more unique team in that it was really my inspiration for this build was this backliner that you see here with the cute bunny. That was actually a fail breed. I was going for I had a pure Kataro, but it had impure eyes and ears, and so I bred it with one of AK's like really high purity tanks, because I was going to basically do a break breed and then repurify the Katara on the following one. But I hit cute bunny from an R2, so I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do with this Axie now? I can't breed it. How am I going to build it into a team? And so this is really using the the cute bunny kind of pinch speeds. And I spoke earlier a bit about trying to be able to pinch Axies. And this is kind of taking a spin on that, but fearing them into the following round. So as you'll see here, both of those Axies are really slow. Like you've got 36 on the bug, so it can really only fear tanks, and then 31 speed on the plant. And so a lot of what this does is that you have the massive damage with the Thorny for early game. You've also got the tank that just provides that trigger with the Yam, but also just a bit of energy generation. And so early game, it's really about getting the tank out of the way, and then into mid game, I can start using the cute bunnies in tandem with the snail shell, just to create a very difficult mid game for the opponent, where they're always thinking, okay, will he fear me? What's he going to do? Do I have to try and avoid a snail shell? What do I do basically? And oftentimes I'll have situations where I'll fear them so that one of their axes is just completely phased out of the game. So like oftentimes people will have like a midline aqua, and I'll fear that, and then they can't use it, and then I've basically just narrowed down an option for them, so it's easier for me to then counter what they're doing. And so that's basically what this does. It's just putting the control back into my hands with the cute bunny, and then of course just your standard backliner with beach, carrot, snail shell. It's always going to be a solid lineup. You've got its own energy generation, you've got balanced damage, and then you've also got the stun.
Right
Now,
on.
I think you said something interesting too there, which is you're trying to force them to make a certain decision, right? And that's something that I always consider, because my team right now doesn't have a whole lot of energy control, mechanics. And so one of the things that I'm always looking at is what the other team has. And a lot of times if they've got steel, or if they've got if they can destroy my energy, I'll just do whatever I can that round and use all my energy, because there's a pretty good chance one of their axes is going to use that and take one of my turns away. And if I don't know. My point is that a lot of times I feel like I'm playing around what the other team has. They're forcing me to make a certain decision based on what parts that I see there. And I'm seeing you're kind of doing the same thing. You're not trying to have the conversation. You're trying to steer the conversation the way you want it based on what they're seeing on your axes.
Yeah, and so one thing that I haven't touched on yet is kind of there's something that Chief and I specifically kind of carrying over from Clash Royale. It's like a leveling of outplays. So level one being like the obvious play. Like let's take, well, it's difficult to take this team, but let's say it's just okay. Level one's me attacking the opponent's tank. Level two for the opponent is putting up a shield to brick wall the tank. Level three is me then knowing that they are going to put up their brick wall, so then I pass and I don't do anything. Level four is them reading the prior three levels and then passing themselves. And so this sort of thing happens a lot within the game, especially in the higher level play. And there's very few players that even make it past level two. But level three is kind of like a rarity when you're playing against kind of your average arena player. And so a lot of what the game is either using the information presented to you, or as you've just spoken about there, forcing the opponent into particular situations where you know their potential options, and you can narrow that down through counting their energy, keeping track of their cue cards. So let's say backdoor cards, energy steal cards, big manipulators like your eggshells and things like that. And just keeping track of them and knowing when they've used it and when it's unlikely they're going to redraw it back. Because really, the base of this game is playing the percentages. And if you know everything that is possibly presented to you, then you can use that to make your decisions. And really, that's what I'd say is a lot of my play style or kind of like approach to the game has always been what's the most likely thing they're going to do? What's the outplay they're going to have? And how can I then counter that? And so, um, yeah, it really is just at base, that's what it is trying to force your opponent into certain positions to where you can then read their outplays. And I don't know whether it's very apparent in tournaments, but like take the series I had against Z. That a lot of the team selection, it came down to that same sort of thing, but then just the plays itself. Chief specifically does a really good job of going into kind of the insights, because of course Chief is that capable of a player. He's using that insight of his to kind of pick onto it. Like he even makes reference to it, the levels of outplays, and then knows when one of us, whether it be me or Z, makes a read on the opponent. And that's something that's really kind of not thought about at all in the lower ranks, I think. And people just put the game down to, oh, he crit me, or oh, they got a good card draw, something like that. They don't actually think about the situations in the game where they had something that, to me, if I look at game, it's so obvious. He's done this, or he has that much energy. I could do this and counter it, but it's just not something that they even consider.
And now this is pushing me back. I used to play poker semi-professionally, and I'm thinking about, counting my outs and counting the opponent's potential outs based on what they've done earlier in the game. And, it's a card game, similar, some of the same rules apply. But man, again, just more insights coming in. This is awesome.
All right, moving over to your Bird Beast set. What do we learn here?
So Bird Beast is pretty much as old as time in this game. It was the first, like when I first came in. Enjoy your note. Is it Gold Boot, the guy that used to breed rims?
Yep. Yeah, he
So
was
yeah,
one of the
Gold.
first big rimp breeders. Yep.
So yeah, this was Gold Boot's original team. Like he used to run this Bird Beast team, and I saw it and I immediately knew there were ways that I could improve upon it. And so the second season I ever played, I won that season with a Bird Beast team with an energy tank in there. And so this is later, like this is ages ago, but now this is to me what's the fully optimized build. But this was before, it was ready. You had a readily available pure bird wherever you looked in the marketplace. You have your perfect rimp, you have a perfect energy tank. This was so long ago, and there was just really like this sort of team, but at least optimized, was unseen. So for me, this is just a great standard team for anybody to have in their arsenal. I don't know how many of the viewers watch tournaments, but Nate uses this often, Z uses this often. It's always just a great one to have in your back pocket because it does zone out a lot of teams. And so here, what I'd say is kind of optimized about this team is that I've got this eggshell post Axie. And the reason why egg post is so strong is that you can use the lift loud to target an Axie that isn't the front, but it's further at the back. And maybe you can't kill it all in one with the bird, or you don't have enough cards to kill it all in one. You simply chuck an egg post on there, and then all of your following attacks will target that Axie. So this is a kind of a big part of the reason why Bird Beast can actually perform against teams like Beast Reptile, because the Reptile is always backdoor covered. No, the Beast is always backdoor covered by the Reptile because you don't want their bird to target your Beast. But that's not a problem when you have the eggshell post, because then you just go swing all the way back round and then you finish it off with your Beast. And to really complement that, you've got this energy, what everyone refers to as an energy tank. Your leaf bug, Sirius, carrot, pumpkin. It's like perfect build. So that allows you to just get lots of energy to actually play your combinations, because these, as you see here, the bird and the beast, there's no straight energy gain. It's just all of their cards cost energy. So that the tank really facilitates that. And that's one thing I would say, that when you're putting together a team, the tank is really the last piece of every single team, and the tank is facilitating or kind of aiding the back two axes. And in this case, I started with the bird, and then I went with the next best possible beast for the current meta, which is a rice beast, and you've got the outplay potential with the Axie and the Jaguar. But then what's missing is the energy gain and that secondary energy manipulation option, and that's why I've gone with the energy tank. And that's really my thought process with any team. It's okay, so what tank is going to best perform in with these other two axes?
All right. Okay, so the next one we have is a double aqua, double fish.
Yeah. So this is another one that you'll probably see a lot with kind of the recent, like Ben from Axie GG broke kind of the pure aqua market, because he was able to basically just get 100% pures and then print as many as you wanted. So this is kind of more readily available on the market now. And this is what, for me, the best possible team, just because it's kind of different to what you normally see. Normally people have full damage with the Koi and the Nemo, which I touched on earlier. But having the Sponge and the Snail Shell, just again, as that added outplay potential and brick wall potential for mid game and the Sponge, just allows the game to be a bit more in your hands past just, okay, am I going to attack or am I going to pass? Because that's really all the double aqua boils down to at base.
And speedy too.
Then,
I mean, these are quick Axies.
Yeah, exactly. And one big thing to note is that the midline aqua is faster than the back aqua. So that against bird beasts, which is what really this team counters, they don't have that outside chance to eggshell post or whatever, backdoor your Koi aqua before it's able to speed up and go ahead of their 1v1 Axie. And then again, the last key piece of the puzzle is the tank. And what the double aquas most struggle against is going to be the watering cans on the front tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And the cactus just allows you to get that extra bit of damage to either finish off a tank or start the chipping down away at a tank. And then, of course, again, this is kind of apparent on lots of my teams. The pumpkin, Sirius, carrot. It's just a great standard setup.
All right. Okay, beast backdoor with an aqua, the backdoor aqua.
Okay, so
because he's got the wing, yeah. So he's got the skip, right?
Yeah, so that's the backdoor kind of potential on this team, and this is kind of a more unique team. RC will attest to this. I see him in the chat, but Winghorn is really rare as a rare move generally, but especially rare on an aqua. And the reason why this is good in the current meta is this is like a counter to Beast Reptile, because you've got this Winghorn aqua with the Ranchu and the Geisha. So Ranchu applies chill, that you can just get rid of Beast straight away without R stamp. And so that really limits kind of we've already spoken about it, the Beast Reptile, and the Beast's really there to get rid of the tank, and that's the main damage option on that team. So if you can eliminate that through a backdoor, then you're really set up for the 1v1 as well with the Beast at the back.
And again, that one has hair, right? You've got hair on that, confident hair. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's quite a unique build. The hair kind of allows it to keep cycling through zero cost with the confident in 1v1 if you're quicker. It just kind of keeps your cards cycling. You've got 2 damage parts, and then Merry, which allows either to have a more defensive option or to force into the last stand. And with the confident, you're able to have 5 last stands at once, which then with the risky beast, which is the 50% bonus in last stand, the Merry really is just there as like an enabler for that extra damage, which can carry you through difficult matchups.
All right. You bring up another point too, or maybe it wasn't completely mentioned, but that's something that I came across a lot when I first started is, you notice very quickly that you don't have a whole lot of energy to do a whole lot of damage. And so you need to add energy to your team. So you add a bunch of these cards that specifically generate, and then you run out of actual cards pretty quickly.
Right.
So, I'm noticing a trend here as well. It's not just about the energy, it's also about keeping that card draw up. And, you've got the pumpkin on the front, you got the hair on the back. Just another thing to kind of note.
Yeah, I've seen people running that Sunder, the discard, and that's kind of a brutal thing. You're looking at it every time you see Sirius. I don't know, Indes, what do you think? Like every time I see Sirius, I'm thinking, gosh, I've got to play everything I can play. Otherwise, they're going to steal some of my energy and they're going to get an advantage. And then when I see somebody with what is the mouth on there? Is it Pincer or the Sunder Claw one?
Yeah, it's Pincer.
I see that and I'm like, "Gal, if I don't play cards, I'm not going to have any cards." Indes has decided that I have not said something intelligent, so or we've lost him.
We might have lost him for a second. And I think while we're waiting for him to come back, I'm going to go grab a backup mic. So bear with me a second.
Yeah, no worries. So again, I just wanted to point out that double fear team. Although I think I saw RC saying, that he beat that team. I still think that's crazy cruel. Indes is a meanie for coming up with that double fear team. And I just love that the nasty fear is called Cute Bunny. That is so awesome. I absolutely love it. Well, hopefully we can get Indes back here as quickly as possible. We were gonna do some Let's Play, but this is going a little bit longer than what I had maybe had in my mind. So
Not to mention, I don't want to get destroyed on camera, but
yeah, I have it all set up ready to go, so we can actually
no,
see.
I think this is good. I think we're getting a lot of good insights here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why ruin that with something else? We can always
Yeah,
have him back for
just
another weekend
watch
to
you and I
completely destroy us.
get destroyed. Yeah, probably good to hold on to that.
You know, you just made me think though about the cute bunny piece of things. Didn't you had your own stream with a trivia a few weeks back or a month or so back?
Yeah.
And one of the questions was about the bunny in
Monty Python.
Monty Python.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's what it comes after. Cute bunny.
For sure.
Fear.
For sure. I love it. All right. Indes, do we have you back, man?
Yeah, sorry. I
I just saw your note. Yep. He's back. He's back, guys.
All right, no worries. Okay,
we'll
so
cut that out.
what we're going to go to is both Enjoy and I put together just a team that we wanted to get some feedback from you. Hopefully, this is not a bad idea, and we don't get too brutalized.
I'm going to go through like 3 after this, just fixing my lineup.
So here's the one Enjoy proposed.
Ugh.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Jesus Christ is right. I'm regretting this so much. Can we send him home now? Just cut him off, please.
I'm sorry. That was... Oh, man. Okay. Is there anything you can say, Indes?
I think I mentioned it yesterday. I think that's a team of land dwellers.
That's right, land dwellers. Only
These
good
are
for
my
land.
minions. They're gonna go chop some wood, guys. Leave me alone.
They can gather goo.
They're good SLP gatherers.
So I guess I might as well go into it. The mystic that you're trying to use just is not very good. I have to put it bluntly. It's got tri-spikes, which generally you want to have a 0-cost activator for. It's got Imp off a Ronin build. Imp's just an awful card without Ronin. Even with Ronin, it's not the best. The Koi and the Lamb are kind of the saving graces. It's like those are 2 good solid cards. But yeah, it's really stunted by the tri-spikes and the Imp. And then the Bird, it's an individually strong Axie, but with the rest of the team, it just doesn't work. So that's the sort of Axie that you'd see kind of in a bird beast or in the times of old, like a double bird. The Feather Fang gives it that extra kind of brick wall option, which is always good because sometimes it can actually play off. You can come off for you if you are able to take a beating of 1 round, because then you're always going to attack first. And then the front tank is that Shiitake is just not viable on a front tank build. I mean, some people try and use it on a backliner, but even then, I think it's not that viable. It's just I don't understand why they put the healing card onto the tank's kind of main part, which is the back. Like you need that strong back to be able to at least take some damage, and then maybe Rosebud on the horn is kind of all right. You are able to use it, but only if you have that brick ball potential on the other part. But yeah, aside from that, Beach Sirius and Carrot, that's a solid build if you were to get a Pumpkin on there. But really, the main thing about this team is that you don't have any beast or bug damage. All of your damage is coming from bird beast. I'm not taking Imp as a beast or bug damage. Imp's just awful. But yeah, so I don't know if you find it, but what I would find is that you either have to commit too much energy to kill tanks, or you're just not able to kill tanks fast enough, and then that really limits you going into the late game. Into the mid game.
I think you're accurate. Imp and this is an important thing though, and kind of why I kept team the way it was rather than changing it up, is, again, new players come in, they can't necessarily buy the best of the best. They kind of have to settle for 3 active cards, or just a couple active cards. They're not often able to buy a specific Axie with the perfect 4 cards. I agree with you on the middle one. Imp is not good at all on that thing. But I would say that the tri-spikes is what carries this team in reality. Having a backdoor, at least in my MMR, is what carries it. Because like you said, killing that tank right up front is not easy to do with this current lineup. So I think that's all accurate.
Oh yeah. I mean, that does let you target their backliners, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing on your point about new players not being able to get kind of a full Axie almost. One thing that I've always said is that on the tank, you want to prioritize a strong back. Like having one kind of impure part, maybe you've got an Aqua or a Beast part in there, at least it will offer some damage. Like there's some viability from it there. But if you don't have that strong back, then you just mincemeat for an opponent's Beast. Especially if you're
I'm in
going to be going
trouble.
against the
I don't
third
think
Beast.
he's. I think I'm in trouble with my build. I guess we'll see. All right. So yeah, I'm gonna go to the next
And
one.
and again, for anybody new who's watching this and hopefully picking up a lot more than I've been able to pick up so far, I'm able to go in and I'm farming 9-10 SLP per game, and I'm winning a large percentage of them with this garbage team, according to Indes. So all hope is not lost.
Right.
You're still able to participate and do pretty decent with
Well, I
even
mean,
this.
yeah, you're probably killing that aqua or bird in the back. That's going to help you out a lot if you're able to do that, and maybe you're doing that round 2 or 3. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, here we go. The mint. So there's a reason I took that front one.
Oh dear.
Uh-oh, that didn't sound so good. I
So
get really
that
I get really excited about combos, so I have a hard time staying away from wanting to try to get combos.
right. So the thing that you're using as a tank would actually be a really strong backliner. Um, it's got the 34 speed Katara, which is a tad fast, but generally you're going to get that trigger in a 1v1. And then again, Cerastus, which benefits from being slower. And then Tiny Dino, which up until the late game is a completely useless card. So unless you're really putting on a backline Axie, it's not going to get much utility for you. And then what we spoke about a lot was this zero cost card. Um, that's so important for a 1v1 Axie. Like this Axie here I'd hate to face it with my like composition. Like if you had that tank as a back Axie, that would be really good against any sort of reptile because you've got the zero cost in the mint to catch the stun, and then you've got the Katara just to keep cycling through the energy game. But yeah, aside from that, the beast is pretty solid, but not with a bug. Because again, it's about the rock paper scissors of damage. Like your front tank, although you could say if it was a back Axie, then yeah, you've got good reptile damage. But as it's a front tank, it's really limiting the amount of damage it will be able to deal because all those moves are really mid to late game damage moves. And then yeah, so you've got the beast as your damage dealer, but then the bug is kind of like it's just there. Like it could work in a 1v1, but it doesn't have enough damage to really be relevant in the early to mid game. So it could work as a 1v1 end boss, but I'd struggle to find kind of the axes that you could use to facilitate it, and a beast definitely isn't the best one for it. So yeah, from that, I definitely say if you move that plant that's trying to be a reptile to the back line, and then sticking a bug that's slower, so like a 33 speed bug that has some damage potential, and then a standard plant tank, then you've got a super solid rounded team there.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, again, this is why we're putting it up. We want to see. But kind of like Enjoy said, I tried this one out just a couple times just for fun, and I was successful. So again, at my level, I'm sure that if I'm in the top 100 leaderboard, the things that Indes has pointed out are going to cause me to be slaughtered. So yeah,
And that
fantastic.
and that's part of the thing too, right? And he mentioned in the beginning is different metas or different MMRs, different ranks have different kind of things that work. And I'm sure Indus's team would crush it all the way up through, but me and you, for whatever reason, are doing just fine with this garbage. So only there's only room to improve, which is nice. The other thing that I'm hearing too, which I don't think was mentioned earlier, is kind of um, the you are talking about parts that work for the end game or parts that work for the mid game. You know, I don't know, the tiny dino in particular, which after round 4 has 150 damage. I don't even have a question on that. It's just another thing that I'm kind of noting is, you don't want to be getting rid of the cards that are going to be better for you late, as your first Axie,
Yeah,
and vice
exactly.
versa.
And that's kind of something that is a bit more advanced, like past already. Kind of the detail we've gone into is
Right.
really the differentiation between mid to early to mid to late game. And yeah, all of those parts. The reason why I call them late game parts, especially like the Cerastus, against the front tank, you're not really going to be getting that trigger very often. And the
Right.
real selling point of Cerastus is that 60 shield is massive, and people don't look at shield too like often enough. Like if I look at Cerastus, that is an incredibly flexible mid like horn card for like a backline Axie, because not only does it offer you that amount of shield that again you're only that's probably why you thought maybe it would work as a front tank, because it has a lot of shield, but then you're not getting the complete like the total utility you could out of it, where kind of in the mid to late game where you're going to be facing those squishier Axies like the faster ones in your aquas and birds, but also kind of the beasts, which you're also probably going to get trigger on, especially with 34 speed there. And really, it's just about maximizing that utility. The same with the Katara. Against the front tank is going to be too slow for you to get the trigger more often than not. Like if you face kind of better teams, they're going to be 31 to 33 speed. So you're
Right.
never going to get that trigger. Same with the tiny dino. It's like it's all about thinking kind of, and that's also kind of partly the difficulty for a newer player in dissecting what um, kind of what's a viable axiom and what isn't. It's if I look at build and maybe the like the parts are individually strong, but they don't synergize in the sense that one of the parts are a mid game move, one of the parts an early game move, blah blah blah, blah. That just doesn't fit together. Then that's definitely something that's a lot more tricky for a new player to kind of pick onto.
No, that makes perfect sense. And to be honest, like I clearly did not go into the depth of analysis that you went into. I was looking for my kind of slowest Kataro because I really liked the Bug Beast group because of the combos that were there in that. Pocky and then that back that when there's a bug card played, you get poison. And so that was kind of the main thing. And then I just looked for my slowest seemingly viable energy generator that wasn't serious, just because I was trying to go with the Kataro instead of carrot hammer serious, because that just feels like that's always what it is. So it was my attempt to be creative. Anyway, all right. Okay, so there were a couple things that I wanted to talk to you about. I just put the roadmap up here real quick to kind of see where things are headed. And, once we get Ronin, it looks like we're going to get probably Battles next, at least according to the roadmap, Battles 2, version 2. And I wanted to put this slide up about Battles version 2 just to kind of get your thoughts about version 2. And then I have a slide that I just have a few specific questions, and then we can wrap up here. I know that you're probably getting pretty late where you're at, but version 2, what do
It's
you
only
think?
after 7. But yeah, so I'm really kind of split on version 2. Um, I might have mentioned it earlier, but I think that really the team that there's a lot of potential with the current battle system, and I think for me, I would have liked to see them try and almost do as much as they could with this before they moved on to the next one. But there are kind of parts of this which are almost exciting. I like that the talent tree is the one thing that kind of sprang out to me, was that each kind of Axie class is going to form a more kind of archetypal structure. Like as now, like for me, reptiles, I see them as backliners. Maybe the talent tree is going to aid them in some way to become more backline oriented. It's the same as the beasts are tank killers. They've got kind of the secondary energy manipulation, that sort of thing. That's kind of exciting to me. But one thing that I do worry about, I'm not sure how obvious it is or whether it was kind of like a more kind of a leak thing that I was told about, but the one, is it one once per kind of game? Is it abilities or something like that? Where you were only able to use it once. I don't know whether it was like a spell or something like that, but
Yeah,
like
something
that.
like
Yeah.
I don't
Was that
remember
the
the exact
secret
name,
one?
but no, it was, man, I don't remember the name of it either. But you're right on point in this. It's once a game sort of
Oh,
abilities.
the item.
No, not that
No,
either.
it wasn't item.
Is it that vase on the screen? On the left it says one on it. Is that what it is?
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah. The one
that's
that gets
kind of what we
removed from the
assumed.
game. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jiho briefly mentioned it when he was in
That's
here
right.
when
Yeah,
Battles V2 was first announced.
that's right.
Right. Okay. But yeah. So my worry with that is that if it is to only be used once per game, then it's got to have some sort of strength to it, doesn't it? Like there's no point in having a once per game ability if it doesn't give you some sort of advantage. And my worry is that if you set up a whole game to force the opponent into a particular position that you can take advantage of, what if they then just use this move and then they're out of the situation that you've outplayed them for 2, 3, 4 turns in advance into, and they can just play this thing and they're out and they're fine. That's really my worry. And right now, the thing that you could almost compare it to is crits. Like if you do get that game-changing crit, that the opponents set you up into this position, but then you just get a crit and you're out and you're fine. It's that same sort of thing, but actually being kind of intentionally coded into the game.
Mm. Yeah. That makes sense.
My gut, and I'm just wondering because I know they're changing the system, so it's more of like a constant back and forth battle. But if it's a back and forth sort of thing, between one team is attacking, one team is defending, I think that whatever that system is would almost be geared towards balancing that, because the attacking team is generally going to have an advantage right off the bat. And you see other games like I'm just going with what I played latest, Gods Unchained. Everybody can have their own opinion of that, but they make up for that with something called, I think, a coin, right? So if you go second, you get a coin which adds an extra energy to your hand the next turn, basically, to make up for that that missed turn.
Hearthstone
right off
has a similar sort of function too, right? If I remember right. Been a while since I've played Hearthstone though.
Oh, don't ask me. It's before my time.
Oh, Hearthstone's before your time. Wow. I'm old. All right. Okay, so ask Indes. These were just a few fun ones that I threw together. We'll see. Okay. So, and we kind of talked about this one kind of quickly, but Battles version 2, biggest hope.
That Chuck comes back.
I love it. The Chuck returns. Right on. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, Battles version 2, biggest concern.
It would be
That
that
Chuck
once per
comes
round,
back. No, sorry. Sorry.
I'm back.
Just what you just were talking about. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
pretty
Indes?
much just that once per round ability, I think.
All right. Next one. Where did your name come from, Indes? How did you come up with that?
Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay, so basically, when I was about 10, I used to play Clash of Clans, and so I was 10. So the name that I named myself was Indestructible because I thought it was cool.
I love it.
So ever since then, I carried that over into Clash Royale, and it got to a point where I was just embarrassed by the name, and everyone would shorten it to Indes anyway. So I just shortened it to that. But then I'd played Clash Royale for such a long time, and the competitive scene was such a big part of my kind of life, so to speak. Like I'd be referred to as Indes for like 1 or 2 hours a day, if you know what I mean. So it was just kind of like a normal thing. I didn't feel like I could ever almost change that to another game tag. It was a kind of thing that I had that I took with me from Clash Royale, and especially as Chief brought me into this game, so it didn't feel right to change that name. So yeah, that's pretty much just that's where it comes from. It's stuck with me since then.
Awesome. All right. Okay, anything currently broken in the card battling game?
Oh, I don't think there's anything specifically that's like incredibly strong. You know, like Wool Gecko was in the past seasons. But I'd say that kind of energy, the energy still moves could do with a little touch on, same as Sirius specifically, and then kind of moves like Chomp and Thorny, I think provide a bit too much value. Chomp I've spoken about a lot today as being kind of like your go-to backline move. Like that's what you want in every single backline build. And the reason why is because it's such a versatile card, but then the base stats itself, I think it gives a bit too much value. So those would kind of be my ones. And then Thorny just does too much damage. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are the ones I'd say are kind of on the stronger side, which I'd like to kind of see nerfed. But again, the team are focusing on V2, so it's more of a hopeful thought.
All right. Do you have any particular desires, or what would you like to see for the tournament scene with Axie Infinity?
Um, to be honest, I couldn't pinpoint anything to improve it. I
Cool.
think that Chief and Axe are like the perfect pair,
Yeah, yeah.
and I like that there's depth in the tournaments. Like I'm genuinely worried about facing players in the earlier rounds because like everybody seems to have gotten to a point where they're at least capable with their own team, like and they know their way around their own team even if they don't play to kind of like to use the outplay example. If they don't play to like the second or the third level, they're still competent with their own team, and so. I think that tournaments are great in the sense that you can always have upsets. And I think a couple of tournaments ago, I don't know how much you two keep up with it, but I was knocked out in round one. DeBoz was knocked out in round two. Lots of the XGG players were knocked out, same as Levox. And in the finals, there was a new player that we'd never heard of before that was actually a scholar playing on, of course, the owner's account with one single team. He got to the finals and pushed Nate to a 5 game in a best of five, and he
Wow.
couldn't even. So that just kind of shows as a testament to how players are strong, and there's always that and there's always that rhetoric that goes around. Oh, old players they have too many Axies in tournaments. You can't do it with like if you have one team, you've got no chance. But there's definitely something to be said for just being a capable player with your own team or your own like small kind of Axie pool. You can still get far in tournaments. Of course, it's people that have more Axies have an advantage, but it's clear if you just look over the most recent tournaments that newer players are always getting up there. Like there's always this standout performance from somebody that takes down a couple of kind of like the more well-known players. So
All right. And then the
And
last question. Yeah, go ahead, Enjoy, before I.
I was, yeah, just building on that last question. You mentioned at the very beginning that you were coaching on a kind of semi-pro Clash team, and that there was almost a payment structure associated with that. I'm just curious, where do you see the Axie? I don't know if pro scene's the right way to phrase it, but where do you see that going? Do you kind of see, maybe some of those similar structures built around this? How did that all work in the past? And I'm looking at this from the standpoint of, I say it a lot, but as players, as owners of Access, it's part of our job to kind of continue building this. It's not the team's job to do everything here. So I'm just looking for other ways that maybe we can all help out, or see the different pathways that this stuff can grow.
right. So essentially, how it works in Clash Royale, I speak more to kind of the higher level as where I coached. Essentially, you had, of course, there was an organization, and this was within like a league, and then they paid out salaries to their players and their coaches, and of course, in order to kind of maintain the balance, you take a percentage of any winnings you get. And for me, in the Axie scene at least, there's definitely a conversation to be had about lending out Axies and taking a percentage of winnings on them. And so something that I'm sure a lot of people know is like since I began when didn't have access to many Axies, mainly just because I didn't have much money. When I came in, I started with a 0.75 ETH investment, which at the time ETH was at like $150, so not much compared to today's standards. And
Right.
I was always able to borrow Axies from Chief and Ben because they knew that I was a competent player and that I was going to improve. So they lent me Axies that I could see fitting into this team or whatever, and basically just kept that creativity. And I think for tournaments, as I've kind of touched on, having that versatility, of course, it is important. Like you can get to further further in tournaments with only the single team. But having that kind of options to swap in against the better players is really definitely something to kind of aim to get. And if that means, let's say you get an Axie off X person and they get 5% of the winnings that you earn from the tournament, as just like a really simple example, that sort of thing could definitely work. And I think Odin and I actually did something similar where he lent me one of his Axies, and I basically set up a thing where he'd get, I can't remember what the numbers were, but for the number of games that I played, that would count towards a percentage of the total winnings that I earned, and then that would be paid to him for letting me use that Axie. And I think that's something that we could definitely see in future.
Cool.
All right. So this last one is a little cheeky, but will Enjoy or Baranar ever improve at Axie battling?
Well, I mean, from today, just seeing how disadvantaged you were from your teams and still managed to get it to decent levels, you clearly have a good understanding of the game. So I think if Enjoy just improved his whole account of land dwellers and maybe put in a couple of decent ones, then he'd have a chance.
There's only one way to go, and that's up, Indes.
Exactly.
That's awesome. All right. Well, hey, this has been a great time. I've had a good time, and again, I love putting this one up there. Axie Infinity, we all believe that this is going huge. And the esports component of it is obviously a very, very important component. And I think that we're all hopeful and excited about Battles version 2. I would like it to come sooner rather than later because, again, we're here focused on this season. We're here trying to figure out how to make the current battling version work. And Indes, you're a genius at that, and we all appreciate your insights and input as far as that goes. But I'm excited to see what you come up with and what you do with the new battling system for sure.
Yeah, I hope it just doesn't change it up too much. I'm worried about my team pool.
And that's a fair worry. I mean, I would like to emphasize that. Like that's tough. This is a situation because of the nature of the digital assets that we're dealing with. It's not necessarily easy to just increase the size of your pool immediately without having a lot of access to funds.
Yeah, and I think I saw something ages ago that somebody said that people like OG players have a big advantage, but I only joined back in April, and of course I had access and I could borrow Axies back then, but everything that I've got in this game is built up from an initial $75 investment, and that's of course through various means, but essentially like my focus has always been on tournaments and trying to get the best possible Axie pool that I can, and that was all just starting from, I'd say, the bottom, like just with the one team. So of course it's much harder now because there's more players. There's like lots of the builds have already been kind of established, or like it's difficult to kind of make a whole new theory because the chances are somebody's already considered it and written it off. So I'm not saying it's like
that's
an easy thing, but
one of the tough things about the current state of Axie Infinity, right? We don't know what's coming. We aren't to release yet. We're not talking about just little nerfs and buffs. We're talking about potential, just very, very large shifts in the way things happen. We don't even have a land game yet, right? But right now in the current status that we're at, that is one of the things that's part of the risk of this game. Anybody who's listening should pay attention to that too, and be mindful that it's important to realize that we're early and we don't know for sure how things are going to pan out when we get to release.
There's still combinations that haven't been bred yet. We still don't have parts, the second tier of parts or the third tier of parts. Like there's still so much to come that could change this all up.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's another point too, I think, for new people. If you don't have a lot of money and you can get a halfway decent team, we don't know what that second evolution of parts is going to look like. So it's possible you get a trash team of Axies right now that turns into something good as it evolves up. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, like I was running that critical escape, that wall gecko stuff before it was decent, and then all of a sudden it turned into something useful. So yeah, that's a good point. Enjoy. Well, Indes, anything else you'd like to share with us? Make sure people know before we sign off.
I don't think so. No, just tune in for Axie Chat, I guess, every Tuesday.
Thank you. I appreciate that plug, Indes. And guys, Indes is just so great in the community, helpful in so many different ways. And most likely, if it looks like he said something that's rough or harsh, it's because he's just having fun and probably being sarcastic. So just calm
Super
down.
sarcastic.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, we do want this community to be fun and enjoyable and have a good community that can have a great time with each other too. So thank you for providing that, Indus. I know that I really appreciate your wit, your sense of humor, and keep it up, man.
Dude, and we didn't even say congrats on winning
Oh
the
yeah,
Waxy Smackathon #2. Like, that was a huge win. I know it had a decent prize pool. I'm sure you'll have more wins under your belt in the future. Um, you're telling people to tune into us. Guys, check out the future tournaments and watch Indes actually in action. Go back and watch the replays, because that's something in and of itself. Indes, I know we've got a couple more tournaments coming up. Is there anything that they should be tuning in to check you out?
I think just follow Chief and Axe on Twitter, because then all the updates will be there. But then also, I believe T-Pen has a tournament. Is it? I'm not sure
Yep.
if it's next week or the weekend after, but that's one that's coming up, and I know I've signed up for.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, that one may as well quickly plug that too. Yeah, I'm kind of helping sponsor that one with T-Pen. That's the T-Pen's Turkey Tussle. That's going to be over Thanksgiving weekend, and yeah, it's great. He's kind of got it set up where people can choose their flights, and so they kind of have a little bit better choice over if there's still options available as to when they want to play. But yeah, it's going to have a great prize pool. As I understand it, we've got a WoW token. We've got about 1,000 Axis that we're going to add into the prize pool. And I think that T-Pen was saying we're going to drop that this weekend as to kind of the plan for how all the added prizes are going to be split out and how that's going to work. So yeah, look forward to that.
Yeah, I think there was even an ETH in there as well from like the entry fees.
Correct.
Yep. Don't take that because I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yep, that's right. There is. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, it's gonna be a good one. It should be a lot of fun for people. And got a shout out to Ed too. In addition to donating some Axis, he's donated a bunch of Axies as well. I think 10 of them.
Wow.
So those will be part of the prize
awesome.
pool too. Yep. All right. Well, hey, thanks. And yeah, Z, we'll get that announced on Discord right away. And there's a flyer out there. You can contact T-Pen if you're interested in that directly in Discord too. So, all right. Enjoy. Always a good time. Endis, thank you so much for being willing to join us today. Boy, it was super helpful for me. It gave me a whole new scope of things to think about. I'll be listening to this episode multiple times just to try to figure things out and improve. So really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep, all right, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Okay, have a good one, everybody. Have a great Saturday. Thanks again for joining us with Axie Chat. We'll be available on the podcast. Enjoy will get that up. Replay will be available here on Twitch and also through YouTube. All right. Hey, take care, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.